And I carry around a little, along with my comb, I think it's very important to carry a little around something. Like check yourself out once in a while. You know, just to make sure you got a halfway decent look on your face. And my Uncle Joe, he was wonderful. He had a wonderful face. He used his eyebrows. You know, we have eyebrows and hardly anybody uses them anymore. Winking used to be a sign of approval. You know, when you wink, my uncle used to wink at me all the time when I was a youngster. I always remember his wink. It was broad and wonderful. It was just like that. And I loved it. I always looked for his wink. And he was always there with it. And your eyebrows, you know, how do you approach someone? Do you go up, come up to them and say, hi, how are you? You know, and it's just raising your eyebrows is a wonderful telling them that you're approachable, you know, and how you are. And it's friendliness. And they know you're someone they can talk to instead of walking up to them with a straight face and they don't know what you're thinking. I think some people do cultivate that sort of thing, but I don't know why. So humor, part of your personality. Also try to look at the world with a twinkle in your eye is another thing. There was a lady who bought a skunk. She had a skunk for a pet, and her neighbor said, you got a skunk for a pet? She says, yeah. She says, where do you keep it? She says, I keep it under my bed. She says, well, what about the smell? She says, well, he'll have to get used to it just like I did. Positive attitude. There was a fellow from Germany that went into the bank and he wanted to cash a check. He says, I want to cash a check. And the guy says, well, okay, just endorse the back of it. He says, I don't sign nothing for nobody. He says, well, you have to sign the back. I don't sign nothing for nobody. He said, you have to sign the back of the check if you want us to cash it. I don't sign nothing for nobody. He says, well, we can't cash it. Yeah, I go to another bank. So he went across the street to another bank. He went over there to a lady teller and he says, I want to cash check. She says, okay, sign the back of it. I don't sign nothing. She says, well, you have to sign the back. I don't sign nothing for nobody. She says, do you understand you have to endorse the, no, I don't sign nothing for nobody. So she grabbed him by the hair and she banged his head on the counter 3-4 times. She said, you sign it. Well, he signed it. So he went across the street to the first bank. He says, I went over there, they cashed it for me. And the man says, well, how come you signed it for them? You didn't sign it for us. He says, because she took the time to explain it to me. If you look around every 5 minutes something happens in humor. It's humorous. You know, Gary Larson, a cartoonist, I mean, he's one of these people that can see humor in everything. In fact, that's why he had to drop out of cartooning after writing a few thousand cartoons. It was affecting his personality. And he was becoming a warped person. He realized that everything he looked at was warped. But he still had this wonderful look at life that he could actually make something. One of my favorites. There are 2 clowns in an alley, and they're standing there hiding in the alley with pies, and they're waiting for this unsuspecting man to walk by, and underneath it said, when clowns go bad. You know, the 2 men hanging in a dungeon upside down, they're manacled to the wall, and there's an alligator, a hungry alligator below, and one man says to the other one, now here's my plan. Great humor, I love it. My grandmother had a wonderful sense of humor. It was a sarcastic type of humor. Now, not all sarcasm is bad. Sometimes, you know, like during a roast, people, it's a purposeful sarcasm. So they insult each other, and it's for fun. And she was like that. I remember her walking out her front door to get the newspaper, and Mr. Harris, the neighbor, was standing at the fence. And he said, hello, Mrs. Costi, how are you? And she said, what do you care? You know, but a minute later, she was next to him at the fence laughing. She was that type of person. She'd always slam you right at the beginning, but she'd make your friend just like that. It was just wonderful. And she lived to be 97 years old with her sense of humor. It was wonderful. And she lived with my father in her later years. And the 2 of them together were really a comic pair. I remember them going shopping one time in a grocery store. And someone asked her, my father he had a beard and everything, and he was 75 years old. And she was in her 90s. And someone asked her, is that your husband? She says, no, this is my baby. And he hated that. He looked older than she did. It was funny, but they were a pair. So, Victor Borges says a smile is the shortest distance between 2 people. Well, that's very true. Eye contact. Departing with a second glance. This is something I've noticed in everyday life, is that sometimes there's false humor out there. You people will smile at you for this minute that you're with them, like when you're in a line at a grocery store or wherever, they'll give you this, have a nice day. And then a second later, they could care less. It's not really genuine humor. And I really advocate that you would look at someone again when you're talking to them or whatever you do. Give them another glance as you're leaving them. You say, "Have a nice day," and everything like that. You know, look back at them one more time, because they'll be looking at you and they'll notice it, and it shows that you care. And that's what humor should be. It should be a part of your personality. It's not just silliness. It's part of your personality as being approachable and someone who cares. And humor is such a wonderful tool for caring and loving, you know. And again, God is love. Love produces joy. Joy produces laughter. It's right there at the top. So friendship is a childhood creation, and it's a mutual attachment. It's valuable in business as well as personal life. So you can stimulate conversations. There's a friend of mine in Dallas. He's wonderful. No matter who he meets as he's passing or if he's walking or jogging, he always says to someone that's approaching him or whoever it is, "Hello, how are you today?" You know, and he actually stimulates conversation that way. And he gets so many results, makes a lot of friends. Zig Ziglar says, "Happiness, like money, is the result of what you do." So how are you? You want to be happy? You know, is that your goal in life, to be happy? Then be enthusiastic. Share your humor, and you watch what happens. It becomes magic. Now, you have to use humor with discretion also. Discretion is very important with humor. There's a man who was a rich cattle rancher who actually was touring Europe looking for exotic breeds of cattle, and he received a telegram from his butler who said, "Your prize bull had just been killed on the road." And this just shook him up. He couldn't believe it. I mean, that was the mainstay of his ranch. He telegrammed the butler back and said, "You should use more discretion when you approach me with a message like that. You could have said that a bull broke through the fence." And then maybe another telegram said he wandered out into the road and was struck by the van. And maybe a third telegram saying he was at the vet's, but he didn't make it. I would have been emotionally prepared. Well, a couple weeks later, he received another telegram from his butler. "Your mother broke through the fence." Yeah. This is not being discreet, although he was trying. There's a fellow that worked at IBM in Montana. He was an engineer in Montana, and he had a little office there in the corner there. And one of his favorite things to do was to stand on his desk when somebody unsuspecting was walking down the hall, and he could see them through his plate glass window, see them coming. He would jump on his desk, and he did an imitation of a vampire. And so when people walked into his office, he was right there, right above them, hovering. And he thought this was just wonderful. And it was always, you know, it got laughs, and he had a good time with that. But one time it backfired. Again, discretion. He saw this lady in the office walking down the aisle, coming towards him. He did not notice that the visiting supervisor of the other plants was also coming down the aisle. Didn't notice him. And so when they walked into the office, there he was on his desk hovering over this supervisor. Fortunately, the man had a sense of humor and they could laugh it off. But not everybody has a sense of humor. So you got to be discreet in what you're doing. It's just like the policeman who pulled over an erratic driver, and he walked up to the window and he said, "Your eyes look a little red. Have you been drinking?" The man said, "Well, your eyes look a little glazed. Have you been eating donuts?" That kind of humor puts you in the clink. There's a fellow that was fishing, and he was carrying a bucket of fish up to his pickup truck when a game warden stepped out from the bushes and said, "You know, this is a catch and release area, and do you have a license?" He said, "No, I don't have a license." He says, "I didn't catch these fish here. These are my pet fish. I brought these fish from home." He says, "Every week." He says, "I bring them down here." He says, "I turn them loose in the lake." He says, "They get a little exercise, some fresh water." He says, "For about 5 minutes, they're always happy to go home with me back in their pond where they're safe and secure." And the game warden said, "What?" He says, "Well, here, if you don't believe me, I'll show you." And he walked down to the lake, and he slowly lowered the bucket into the lake. He says, "There's Tommy and Millie and Ruth, and there's Janie and little Joey." He's a little slow. Whoop, there he goes. "Okay, fellas." He says, "This is the second time today." He says, 5 minutes. 5 minutes, that's all you've got. And so they wait, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And the game warden said, "Well?" He says, "Well, what?" He says, The fish, when are they coming back?" He says, "What fish?"